Welcome to Conversations Live. For more than a decade, we've brought you the best in books, entertainment, celebrity interviews, and current events. When the movers and shakers of the world have something to say to you, they say it to us first. Here's your host, Cyrus Webb.
And welcome back, everyone, to Conversations Live. I'm your host, Cyrus Webb. Glad you all could join us once again. But for our radio audience here in Mississippi at WYAD 94.1 FM and WYADonline.com, we're glad that you all could be with us. Also, tuning in through our friends at iHeartRadio and Amazon Music Podcast. We're glad you all could be with us as well. We're excited to welcome Mr. Ed Hajim to our program today. He's written a fascinating new book that chronicles his life, lessons, and where he is today. It's called On the Road Less Traveled, An Unlikely Journey from the Orphanage to the Boardroom. We'll talk to Mr. Hajim not only about the writing of the book, but also what it's been like for him to share his own personal journey with the world and to see the response. Mr. Hajim, thank you so much for the time. Really appreciate it.
Dude, thanks for inviting me. It's nice and early in the morning, and I'm ready to go.
Well, look, I'm glad to hear that. You know, in Chapter 17 of the book, A Suitcase of Letters, Mr. Hajim, you said this, and I think it's a great place for us to start. You wrote, there is an old Yiddish proverb that says, man plans and God laughs. And then you say, I fully understood the wisdom of that as I contemplated contacting my mother. I could see that despite my most careful planning, the road of life was totally unpredictable. And I think that says so much about this book, On the Road Less Traveled. What has it been like for you, Mr. Hajim, to be able to look at where you came from and where you are today?
The book has been a big change in my life, actually. I've always asked myself, what's next? And it looks like the book is what's next. When I was 18 years old and leaving the orphanage to go to college, I decided to bury my background. I was ashamed of being in orphanages and foster homes, and I wasn't going to tell anybody about it. When I went to college, I told people my father was a merchant marine. We lived in a post office box in San Francisco, and my mother died when I was 3. And that was the end of the story. And I kept that pretty much the same story for 60 years until I became the chairman of the board of trustees at the University of Rochester. And I met my 75th birthday. My wife and my children said, Dad, you got to start writing this down. It's unfair. So I did. I attempted it, and I got it written down. And when I sent the first galleys out, friends of mine, they said, no. And you read the back of the book, there's 15 blurbs there. Those are the people I sent the books to. They all said, no, you can't just give this to your family. You've got to distribute it to a wider audience. And so I decided to go public, which I've never done before in my life. I've always been a person who to live happy is to live hidden. But it's been a great experience because I could write a book on the responses to my books by people, telling me how they associate with the different parts of my life and how they're inspired. I mean, the letters have been fantastic. I had a letter from one young lady's mother who said, you've changed my daughter's life because she wasn't going to go to college, and after listening to you, she's going to college and she's excited about it. And I think this is a real change in my life. I never thought I'd ever go public and, talk to people like you on the radio and so forth because I shied away from all that type of publicity when I was on Wall Street.
Right. Well, Mr. Hajim, I appreciate you sharing that. And I think the thing about when I started reading the book, On the Road Less Traveled, the thing that got me was it, to me, makes a success even sweeter and more appreciated. Is that kind of what you also feel like? Because, I mean, no one can say you were given anything. You worked hard. You were able to stay focused, driven, even when challenges came. Do you think because of where you came from, it did make where you are today even more satisfying?
Oh, Cyrus, absolutely. And I gave a lecture to the Horatio Alger kids, which I'm now a Horatio Alger member, and they all come from backgrounds somewhat worse than mine in many cases. And I said, you're lucky. And they all looked up to me with question marks and said, what do you mean? And I said, well, but you can live the American dream. My children can't because they grew up in a good household and a good neighborhood. So it is sweeter because I've overcome all these things. And so there's really a problem when things are good because you have to teach people to live through difficult circumstances so later in life they can handle them. In fact, many of my problems early in life gave me disadvantages which became advantages later in life. And the successes that I basically had were sweeter by far. And also, every situation seemed to get a little bit better. I mean, I had a very rough year my first year in college, but it was much better than being in an orphanage. So I actually appreciated it. And it gave me and now basically one of my major principles is gratitude. I'm really grateful for everything that, I've been given. In fact, when people ask me how I am, I say, instead of giving them an organ symphony, I say to them, I'm grateful.
Yeah. One of the things that was really powerful to me, Mr. Hajim, was the letters. And so it seems like writing has always been a part of your life. You even share letters that you wrote to and from your father. What was that like for you to think about the power of words in your life?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm just sorry that people don't write letters. I still write letters because I find that thinking is very fuzzy. Talking is a little bit better. But the only really definite form of communication between two people, but between you and yourself, is writing things down. And in fact, I think it's very, very important. When I was giving a little talk to a group of college seniors, they said, "Ed, you have too many ideas. Give me one thing to do." And I said, "Sit down and write your plan down. Write down for yourself where you think you want to go and how you think you might get there." And that's very important. Sure, there'll be a turn in the road, but if you have a plan, the turn of the road won't be the end of the road. And I must say, the reason I was able to write this book is that my father, God bless him, saved every letter that I wrote to him, and I saved every letter that he wrote to me, and I spread them out on a big table. My wife did the work, and we looked and basically compared what I remembered with facts. If I didn't have those letters, I couldn't have done that. So writing is, I think, very important, and I think it's one of the things that's being phased out to some extent in today's world, because we used to write long letters to each other. And I have long letters that I wrote to my wife before I got married and vice versa. So I'm really very enthusiastic about writing things down. And I have yellow pads, miles of them, of plans. This is my plan for 2009. And it's humorous because you look back and you realize how foolish you are. And sometimes when you get it right, it's kind of fun, too, as well.
Right. What is your hope, Mr. Hajim, when people read the book On the Road Less Traveled, if they have the privilege of hearing you speak, what is your hope that your story does for them in reminding them of life's possibilities?
Making it simple as possible, and you never can make it too simple. Couple, 3, 4 things. First of all, anything is possible. How can a kid that weighs, 80 pounds and is 4 feet 11 when he enters high school and has no parents at all? I mean, nobody came to my grade school graduation. Nobody came to my high school graduation. Nobody came to my college graduation. Nobody came to my graduate school graduation. I had no money. When I was 28 years old, I still had negative net worth. So anything is possible. That's number one. Number two, education is the solution to everything, or almost everything. And then following on from that, never be a victim. Use the energy that you would use externally, internally. Drive yourself towards what's next. Don't be a victim. Don't suffer with things that go wrong, because in your lifetime, you will be a victim realistically, and maybe your fault. But there may be other times when it's not your fault. It wouldn't be any good to be a victim. I spent 7 years at Lehman Brothers. I'm not embarrassed to say I did almost everything right, but my boss didn't like me, and he threw me out. So I could have been a victim and fought him and so forth. No, I went on to the next thing, and I luckily found my dream job. So that's kind of number 3. And number 4 is, I think, always pay attention to your context. What period of history are you living in? And, what kind of things are going to happen in your lifetime? Pay attention to that, and always try to get the wind at your back. In other words, the difference, I'm lucky for lots of reasons, but one of the reasons I'm lucky is I was born at the right time. I was born in 1936, and I spent most of my life in a very good period of American history. I think that's one thing that people should do. But there are about 15 lessons in the book, if you can glean them. One, of course, is marry the right woman. Find someone to love. Find someone who can share your life. Find someone who you can support and will support you. And that's one of the main messages that goes through the whole book.
Love that. Again, everyone, Ed Hajim has been our guest. The book is On the Road Less Traveled, out now through our friends at Amazon.com or through your favorite local bookstore. Mr. Hajim, thank you so much for the time. Really appreciate you stopping by.
Cyrus, take good care and have a great day, and may the force be with you.
Thank you. I appreciate you. And we thank your audience for tuning in to another great segment of Conversations Live.